You know those cheesy rom-coms where the girl stares at a ring, all glowing and happy? Yeah, that's so not my reality anymore. My wedding ring feels more like a shackle than a symbol of love. It sits there, a constant accusation whispering, "You broke your vows, you destroyed everything." Hell, if I focus hard enough, I swear I can hear the tiny metal links rattling. The worst part isn't even the ring, it's the damn scent of him that clings to me. Not even his cologne. Those bottles stand untouched now, but that intimate smell that's purely his. That subtle mix of soap, his natural warmth, and that weird hint of sunshine his hair picks up. It used to be my safe haven, a promise of comfort. Now it's an assault, a tainted reminder of everything I've thrown away. His touch. It used to spark this fizzy feeling under my skin. Now, I flinch. Every time his hand brushes mine, his arm settles around my shoulders, I feel like I'm on fire. The worst is the look in his eyes, a flash of confusion before he covers it up. He knows something's wrong, senses the shift between us, but can't figure me out. Of course, he can't. I become a master of dissection. Every lie, every flimsy excuse, is a goddamn brick in this monstrous wall I've built between us. It wasn't a conscious plan. It just happened. One tiny untruth, then another, until this chasm yawned wide, and now he looks at me sometimes like I'm a stranger. I want to rip my own hair out, to scream that it's all my fault, that I'm the one who turned our life into this bleak shadow of what it was. Nights are endless torture. Dreams, if you can even call them that, warp his face into an ugly mask of betrayal and rage. He shouts all the words I deserve. Liar, traitor, worthless, each one twisting the knife deeper. I jolt awake with those accusations ringing in my ears, gasping for breath, soaked in sweat and shame. He sleeps beside me, breathing slow and even, while I inhabit the role of the worst kind of monster, a deceitful wife. The crushing weight of that realization makes it almost impossible to close my eyes again. My phone buzzes, and my heart does a traitorous flip-flop. It's him. The other man. His texts are a lifeline I never should have grabbed onto. Each word feels like a jolt of electricity, a rush of something dangerous and thrilling. He makes me feel seen, desired, things that have been fading away in my marriage for too long. His messages are the only part of my day that don't feel like a suffocating fog of guilt. Of course, I've turned into a freaking pro at hiding. Phone password protected like it holds national secrets. I delete messages obsessively, paranoia gnawing at the back of my mind. Every time a notification pops up, a sliver of terror slices through me. It could be my husband seeing a glimpse of something I can't explain. I live on this constant tightrope, adrenaline buzzing under my skin, the slightest noise making me jumpy. The strain is spilling over. Fights with my husband flare up over nonsense, the dishes left unwashed, a forgotten task. It's not really about these tiny things, though. It's the guilt eating at me, twisting itself into a hot ball of resentment. He doesn't deserve my anger, but I can't stomach my own shame, so I lash out instead. We're circling each other warily, our once safe spaces filled with this unspoken tension. Intimacy. It's the most twisted kind of torture. His touch, the weight of his body, should be everything good and familiar. Instead, every time we try to be close, all I see is a flashing neon sign in my mind: cheater. Liar. I want to push him away, to scream at him that I don't deserve his affection, but that would expose my wretched secret. I'm stuck in this horrible performance, pretending that everything is normal while I feel like I'm fracturing inside. Then came the day I decided, or maybe just gave in to the inevitable. The first actual meeting with the other man, a clandestine coffee date on a lunch break, my lies to my husband flimsy and rushed. The moment I saw him in person, my stomach twisted in a knot of excitement and terror. The conversation flowed like liquid fire, all intoxicating energy and shared secrets. It felt like finally taking a breath after being underwater for too long. Do I even need to say it? It was wrong, all of it, but maybe that's what makes it so damn addictive. It's a release from the prison of guilt I've built, even as it drags me deeper into the mess I've created. The affair, it's like a quicksand pit, dragging me under. Every stolen meeting, every heated text exchange, pulls me in deeper. It's this sick cycle of thrill and agony. The other man whispers promises into the night, words I desperately want to believe. Yet, even when I'm caught up in the moment, there's a nagging voice in my head saying, this is madness. This won't end well. Somewhere on the periphery, there's the self-loathing. A constant churning in my gut, a sense of disgust that I can't quite shake. I look in the mirror and see a stranger, a person I don't even recognize anymore. This pit of betrayal inside me widens every day, eating away at whatever good was left. But hey, my brain has an excuse for everything, doesn't it? Like some twisted defense attorney, it starts listing off justifications. My husband, he's been busy, preoccupied. Sure, marriage can ebb and flow, but I craved more attention. The other man, he filled that emptiness, made me feel wanted again. The word, lowly, pops up a lot in my internal monologue. Makes this whole mess feel a bit less monstrous, somehow. Thing is, the high of the affair is starting to curdle. The secrecy, constant fear of discovery, the lies piled on lies. It's exhausting. Turns out, cheating doesn't fix broken things, just adds a whole new layer of brokenness. It's like putting a dirty bandage on an infected wound. It doesn't help the problem, it just makes it worse. Worst of all, I think my husband knows. Not the details, thank God, but he senses something is deeply off. It's in the way he looks at me, the slight hesitation before he touches me, his questions, those are the worst. Simple, innocent things like, you seem preoccupied lately, or, is everything okay? Each one slices through my carefully constructed facade, making me break out in a cold sweat. His concern feels like a heavy chain around my neck, a constant reminder of the monstrous deception I'm living. The word, confession, hangs in my brain, refusing to take shape on my lips. Part of me knows it's the only way out of this mess, a desperate attempt to salvage some shred of who I used to be. But then the terror kicks in. What if he leaves? What if he never looks at me the same way again? Our entire life, the house, the routines we built, everything we said was forever, it all crumbles in my mind. I imagine the devastation on his face, the shattering of his trust, and it cripples me, keeps me trapped in this suffocating prison of silence. Meanwhile, the other man is no savior. He's become demanding. His messages shift from sweet nothings to something almost possessive. Jealousy seeps through, questions about my life, veil threats if I dare suggest slowing down. Our affair, once an exhilarating escape, is turning into another kind of cage. He's not some knight in shining armor, he's an anchor dragging me to the bottom. And then the slip, the almost inevitable close call. My husband picks up my phone to hand it to me, and just for a second, there it is. A text from the other man, a suggested nickname flashing on the screen. The blood drains from my face. I manage to play it off, invent some lie about a coworker, but the damage is done. My heart pounds against my ribs, a relentless drumbeat of panic. When my husband turns away, I vomit in the bathroom. The fear isn't abstract anymore, it's nausea, shaking hands, cold sweat. With a surge of clarity, I know this has to end. The guilt, the anxiety, it's a parasite sucking the life out of me. I should feel relief to finally act, but instead, there's a hollow dread. I'm trapped by the consequences of my own making. This clean break I desperately want is an illusion that will shatter into 1,000 ugly shards the moment it begins. Ending the affair proves messier than I anticipated. The other man cycles through fury, pleading, guilt tricks, even veiled threats to keep me under his thumb. It's ugly, the kind of desperate showdown that makes me realize exactly how deep the rabbit hole goes. Cutting him off is agonizing, like surgery without anesthesia, each exchange leaving a raw, painful wound. He won't take no for an answer. The other man bombards me, calls I ignore, messages overflowing with manipulative misery, a few laced with thinly veiled threats. Wouldn't want your husband to find out how you really are. It's relentless, and the terror of exposure is a constant hum under my skin. Sleeping? Forget about it, every sound, every shift of light makes me envision my husband discovering the truth in the ugliest way possible. And then, the bomb drops. My husband finds an earring on the floor. A single, flashy hoop that looks absolutely nothing like anything I own. It sits on his palm like a malevolent insect, gleaming with accusation. Panic is an understatement. My guts clench, my mind races, searching for a plausible story that won't immediately explode in my face. He doesn't yell, but there's a tremor in his voice when he finally asks, "Is there something you need to tell me?" It's a question poised on the edge of a cliff, and I'm already falling. I can lie, make up a frantic excuse, maybe buy myself a little more time. But what's the point? The noose is tightening, the air is turning thin. All that comes out is a pathetic sob. Then the words start spilling, clumsy and jumbled, a torrent of self-disgust mixed with desperate pleas for forgiveness. Each painful detail feels like a knife I'm twisting into him. He doesn't interrupt, he just sits there, absorbing it all, his face turning ashen. Seeing his devastation is like a perverse mirror. Every tear he sheds, every flinch away from my touch, echoes the torment I've been silently inflicting on myself. His hurt is a physical force in the room, a weight crushing the last bit of deluded hope that this might be somehow fixable. There are no words to describe that emptiness, the horrifying realization that I've shattered the life we built, broken something that might be beyond repair. The silence stretches between us, thick and suffocating. Each tick of the clock sounds like a hammer on a nail. I want to scream, to break something, just to shatter this horrible stasis. Yet, I also want to curl into a ball and disappear, become invisible to his pained eyes. He used to look at me with love, or even simple amusement. Now there's just a void in his days, a chilling emptiness. The home we built, warm and welcoming, suddenly feels like a crumbling mausoleum. His voice cuts through the quiet, hesitant yet razor-sharp. Is there someone else? The question I dreaded most has finally arrived. I nod, a pathetic little jerk of my head, unable to meet his eyes. There's no hiding it anymore, no more excuses will plaster over the gaping wound I've created. The shift in him is terrifying. He's always been so calm, such a gentle soul. Now, his entire body tenses, a tremor in his hands. His voice rises, tinged with a wrath I've never seen before. It's laced with disgust, with betrayal, with the echo of 1,000 shattered promises. My tears flow freely now, useless and shameful. Apologies tumble out of me, a pathetic litany of "I'm sorry's" that sound hollow even to my own ears. I'm not begging for forgiveness, there's no way he could grant that. I just need to say it, maybe to convince myself that some tiny, broken part of me still recognizes the depth of my actions. Get out, the command slices into me. Each word is laced with ice, a complete severing of any warmth that remained. His face is a mask of cold fury, every trace of the man I knew is gone. I obey without protest. What else can I do, when I've destroyed any right to remain in this haven he called home? Packing is a mechanical act, hands move, shoving clothes into a suitcase I haven't touched in years, but my mind feels numb. Each familiar item, a sweater he once complimented, the fuzzy socks I wore while reading on the couch, is a hammer blow. It's the concrete reality of what I've done, the dismantling of this life I no longer deserve. Our goodbye echoes with emptiness. My words of apology stick in my throat, useless remnants of shattered vows. He doesn't look at me, just stares at the spot on the wall, his form rigid with hurt. The silence feels more deafening than any screams could be. Each step towards the door takes monumental effort. I'm walking away from everything I've ever known, yet I'm not sure where I'm going. The only certainty is crushing, unbearable regret. It's a constant companion, a low thrum of self-hatred that I know will haunt me for a long, long time. A friend takes me in, offering a place to stay and a shoulder to cry on. Yet even among kindness, shame burns like an open wound. I see myself through her eyes, a cautionary tale, the woman who threw it all away. The judgment is unspoken, but it doesn't need to be. I judge myself far more harshly. Then my phone vibrates. It's a text from him, short and devoid of emotion. We need to talk about the future. The words send a jolt of panic and a flicker of something, hope, maybe? It's such a dangerous, pathetic little spark. Yet, it ignites despite my best efforts. Even after everything, some shred of me can't fully let go of what we had. The possibility, however slim, that there's a path forward hangs like a question mark, both terrifying and irresistible. The whispers swirl faster than a wildfire. News of my betrayal seeps into every corner of my world, pitying glances from neighbors, the abrupt silences when I enter a room, the once friendly texts that abruptly cease. My social circle shatters, some condemning my actions with vicious certainty, others offering awkward, faltering support that feels more like a grim obligation than genuine compassion. The other man desperately tries to worm his way back into my life. His calls and messages make my skin crawl. It's like finally seeing him clearly, his empty promises, the possessiveness masked as care. I block him with a ruthless resolve that's a stark contrast to how easily I fell for his manipulation before. No more games, no more poisonous contact. He was a symptom of my brokenness, not the solution. Sleep becomes my enemy, each night replays the worst of it all. My husband's shattered face, the cruel words hurled at me, the crushing weight of my mistakes. It's an infinite loop of guilt and despair, the dark hours stretching into an abyss haunted by relentless introspection. I see my choices with brutal clarity, knowing they're inked permanently into my story. My hand hovers over his name in my phone more than once. Finally, with a mix of dread and a sliver of desperation, I type a message. Words can't fix what I broke, but they're the only bridge I can try to build across this chasm. It's a small step, sending that tiny text filled with vulnerability and fear. There's no guarantee he'll respond, but clinging to the numbness isn't an option anymore. We choose to meet in a quiet coffee shop, neutral territory tainted by painful memories. It used to be our spot, a place for easy conversation and shared laughter. Now, the air between us feels thick enough to suffocate. His eyes are guarded, etched with a weariness that mirrors the exhaustion burning through my own soul. We're strangers bound by a shared history, and the path back to any kind of understanding, if it even exists, looks impossibly long and steep. Our conversation isn't pretty. It's a raw, messy excavation of the past. His voice, once so familiar, now rasps with barely contained hurt. How could you? And, what was I not enough? Hang heavy in the silence between us. My answers are clumsy, a tangle of self-hatred, confusion, and stumbling apologies. Neither of us has the language to navigate this wreckage, but there's a desperate need to somehow try. The suggestion of therapy comes with a sigh of defeat. It's not a magical fix, we both know that. Reconciliation might be a distant star, something to squint at rather than reach for. But maybe, just maybe, there's a path toward understanding in this clinical space, a safe place to dissect the ruins of what we once were. The therapist is gentle but unflinching. Her questions cut like scalpels. Why? Is the constant drumbeat. Why risk everything? Why him? Why not seek help within the marriage? My explanations feel flimsy, even to myself. I talk about feeling invisible, about craving something I couldn't define. All of it sounds so pathetic when laid bare. And always, the question hangs unspoken. Was it worth it? We spiral into familiar territory, old resentments flaring amidst the ashes of my betrayal. His voice cracks as he lists my wrongdoings, a litany of deception and pain. My own tongue lashes out in self-defense, the same arguments echoing emptily in the sterile room. It's a sickening loop of hurt, a broken record neither of us can quite stop yet. My apologies are nothing but noise at this point. Even to my own ears, they lack sincerity, a mere formality rather than an attempt to bridge the yawning gap between us. Actions, not words, are the only thing that might matter now. But I'm paralyzed, unsure what those actions should be, terrified that nothing I do will ever be enough. The waiting room of my individual therapist's office feels like a confessional booth. I'm here not to fix my marriage, that might be beyond repair, but to unravel the tangled mess within me. The therapist doesn't judge but prods. She wants to dig into the why, the hidden vulnerabilities and twisted needs that led me to this destructive choice. It's uncomfortable, dredging up past insecurities and patterns I barely dared to acknowledge before. Days bleed into each other, a blur of self-analysis and raw regret. I journal, pouring out the ugliness onto the page, hoping to find clarity in the mess of thoughts. Everything hinges on that one question. Is there any chance of salvaging the wreckage I caused, or is our marriage an empty shell destined to crumble into dust? Each day, I face him, a broken reflection of my guilt mirrored back in his eyes. We move haltingly through routines, the weight of unspoken questions hanging in the air. Surprisingly, it's him who hesitantly brings up forgiveness. It's a word loaded with pain and potential, a distant peak we might strive for but may never reach. We both know forgiveness isn't a switch, that there's no guarantee it will ever fully arrive. But we recognize it as a possible, necessary goal if we want any chance at building something from the ashes. My next steps are hesitant but determined. Apologies are meaningless now, it's actions that hold any weight. I become meticulous about respecting his boundaries, about giving him space when he needs it. Kindness replaces defensiveness, a conscious choice even when the hurt in me still flails in protest. I don't do this to earn my way back in, but because it's the only way I can regain even a shred of self-respect. Whether there'll be reconciliation, or if we'll simply walk separate paths, remains unknown. The future is a blank page, terrifying in its emptiness. All I have is the present, and the relentless work of healing myself. Perhaps, if I truly